Hello, beloveds. Welcome to the Amanda Collins podcast. It's my honor to help you awaken to joy, be your greatest self, and live a life you love. I'm Amanda Collins. Each week, I'll share tips, practices, and rituals to help you feel the storehouse of joy inside. I'll answer your questions and talk with thought leaders from around the world about health, wealth, love, conscious living, and parenting. Are you ready to live your most fulfilled life? Laura Plumb is a practitioner and yoga of Ayurveda, yoga and Jyotish, and author of Ayurvedic Cooking for Beginners. She is the host of the 58-part TV series Veda Cleanse, with recipes and daily practices for seasonal wellness, and of the 12-part series Divine Yoga. Laura leads trainings and retreats internationally and offers online seasonal cleanses and courses. You can learn more about Laura at lauraplumb.com and get more Ayurvedically inspired recipes on her amazing blog, foodalovestory.com. I am so excited for you to hear this interview and learn all about Ayurvedic living and cooking, and how to eat and love being connected with Mother Earth and the foods that you put into your body, how to find the sacred in everyday living, and to learn how about eating at certain times can actually help you lose weight, and so much more goodness. Please join us for this amazing interview. Well, I am so honored to welcome Laura Plumb. Laura Plumb is one of my dear teachers and mentors of 10 years. I actually sat down the back of the yoga room for 10 years. I would get up at 6 a.m., be in her yoga class at 7 a.m. for 10 mornings, every Friday morning for like 10 years. And Laura, I am so grateful to have you here. I mean, she is the most wise and loving, and talk about present, like I feel like having a conversation with you can and will and has transformed my life in the matter of a couple of minutes, so I am so grateful to welcome you. Thank you for being here today.
Amanda, it's so wonderful to be with you. I just hearing your voice lifts my heart, and hearing you remember that for 10 years we would join together in yoga in the mornings actually makes me a little weepy. So beautiful.
And I have to say, like, it's like once you've experienced Laura's class, I don't know. I just like, I do my own practice, and it's just, it was just so sacred and so amazing. So anyway, I'm so grateful. And Laura, I feel like speaking with you, it's like, if you have any questions at all in the universe, it's like speaking to the universe. And you have this ability, because I know anytime I talk to you in person or on the phone, it's almost like you have an ability that, like, it's like, oh my goodness, she's seeing my soul. She is seeing every single part of me. And it's like, oh, I can't hide. So not that I'd want to, but so anyway, I'm so grateful to have you here. And
Thank you.
And I'm so excited about your new book coming out.
Yes, thank you.
Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, sure. Of course, the book is called Ayurveda Cooking for Beginners, and I've been writing about Ayurveda, particularly Ayurveda and food, and how we can really bring the wisdom of Ayurveda into our kitchen and into our everyday meals. And I was just so fortunate that a publisher wrote to me last July and said, we want to do a book on Ayurveda cooking for beginners to really make this science accessible to everyone. And we're looking for a writer. Do you want to do it? And of course, I felt like my intention for last summer was to sit and write the book I wanted to write. So in terms of speaking to the universe, it felt like the universe heard that intention and delivered it via this publisher. And they've been wonderful. They've terrific editors and terrific art team, and they put together an amazing book. And it's such a great reminder that working with a team and having that kind of support in the world is phenomenal. And just on that note, that's one thing that I'd love to teach about Ayurveda. It's really the science that we are nature, and that nature's got your back, and that you are supported. So it was so beautiful that the process of bringing out the book with that message actually was so supportive as well. Yeah.
And so beautiful, because of course all of us that are blessed enough to read it will feel that energy as we feel supported, putting together these amazing recipes. And just
So.
to actually go a step back from that, why Ayurveda? Like what got you into Ayurveda?
That's a great question. It's a great question for, I love being able to talk to you about it, because you have an understanding that these Eastern medicines, Eastern philosophy, Eastern wisdom, it's got something for a lot of us. You already have a knowledge of that, but for people who don't, really starting with not knowing anything about, let's say, feng shui or Ayurveda or even yoga, for me, I just always loved the fact that when you're in nature, you feel more alive, and when you are participating in some act, some ritual, some connection with nature, and then you feel healthier, you feel happier, you feel quieter, you feel stillness. But there's something in nature that's really magical and really healing. And from a very early age, I was going into nature, you could say, to find myself, or to find that connection with that deeper silence and that deeper stillness and that deeper sense of connection. And I studied food, and I studied health exercise and yoga, and I studied herbs, and I studied shamanism. I studied all kinds of different things. And finally, when I bumped into Ayurveda, I realized that, at least the way I experienced Ayurveda, it just felt complete. It felt like everything that I'd ever learned was here in this one system, and it expanded out from there. So it's considered one of the oldest forms of medicine. It's considered the most comprehensive system of medicine. It's got 8 branches, including pediatrics and surgeries and rejuvenations, etc. So it's a very comprehensive system. It's a very complex system. But what I love so much about it is that it's also very simple. It's just based on 5 elements: space, air, fire, water, earth. When you know the elements, then you really know Ayurveda, and you know how to bring balance into your own life based on the application of opposites, right? So if you're feeling very spacey, you need more water or earth, right? If you're feeling sluggish, you've got too much mud, that's water and earth, then you might need more fire or more air to get you moving. So it's based on things that we can know ourselves, we can experience ourselves, and it's really based on the wisdom that's already encoded within us. So it's just kind of bringing forth that deep inner knowing, that soul knowing, but bringing it forth in a way that can be, expressed and shared. So beautiful science, and just even studying it makes us all feel better.
I love that you say that, and obviously I can relate on so many levels, and just that being out in nature and having that connection with nature and the elements. And of course I have studied Ayurvedic medicine with you in the past, and so as you talk about the 5 elements, but we also have our own elements, like our doshas. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. So we are all made up of all 5 elements. And the idea is that, there's space in the body. There's even space in every cell. So right down to the cellular level, there's space. Air is wind or movement. So everything in the body is moving, right? All our physiology is movement. The fact that I'm speaking right now, people are listening, all of that requires this movement, mental movement, and synaptic firings and crosses, and all kinds of, your heart's beating and circulating blood. The fire element is digestion, metabolism. The water element is, of course, we know that we're made up primarily of water, and then the earth is basically your bones and your tissues. So the 5 elements are there in the body. They're there physically, they're there metaphorically, and they combine to make what we call 3 doshas. And a dosha has 2 meanings. The first, and the positive meaning, is that it's a bioenergy. So air and space combine to give vata dosha, and vata is the prime governing dosha in the body. It's that which causes all that moves throughout the body. Pitta dosha is fire. It's fire with a little bit of water. So again, it's the digestion and the metabolism. And then the kapha dosha is water and earth. And of course, if you combine water and earth, you can make clay and bricks and building blocks of of anything, of any kind of a structure, including the human body. So there are 3 doshas that are bioenergies that, again, we all have. If we don't have them, we don't have life. The thing is, we tend to have one that is dominant. So there's one that is, stronger, you could say, than the others. A person who has more space or air, the vata dosha. The second meaning for dosha is a dysfunction or an imbalance. So if you have more of the vata dosha, then the imbalance will be too much wind, a feeling of being scattered, too light, too restless, too mobile, can't quiet down, can't fall asleep, insomnia. It causes pain in the joints, and it can cause neurological problems and digestive issues. The pitta dosha, if somebody has more of the pitta dosha, then they're bold and they're brave. They've got a lot of fire. They can see clearly, so they're good at being coaches or leaders because they can see where we all are going. They're good editors, etc. But the pitta dosha, when it's out of balance, causes inflammation, right? Fire in the body, or anger at the emotional level. And then the kapha dosha. The kapha dosha is water and earth. Water is soft and flows, and earth is grounding. So they're very nurturing, kind, loving people. Very patient as well. When kapha dosha is out of balance, it leads to obesity. Sometimes we say it's cancers, although any dosha can have that, and diabetes. So things of too much accumulation in the body, and at the emotional level, it's too much holding to relationships and not being able to let go and move more easily through change. I just want to add, I mentioned the positive sides of the pitta and kapha. So the vata dosha is very creative, very curious, very inventive, tends to be a little bit more spiritual, maybe even intuitive. So they all have their positives, they all have their pluses. But what we're looking at in Ayurveda is we're looking at how we restore balance. And that's about how would we bring the air element back into balance? How would we bring the fire element back in? And all of that is through application of opposites. So too much air, we bring in fire, water. Too much fire, we bring in air, water. Too much water, we bring in the air and the fire element. So in many ways, it's very simple. But of course, as you know, we address the individual, not the disease, which means if somebody says, how do you deal with diabetes? My teachers have always said, show me the person. I don't treat a disease, I treat a person, which I think is so beautiful. It really restores the humanity to medicine. And because that is true, with 7 billion people on the planet, we do have 7 billion different protocols, and that's the complexity of it. But having said that, it's based on these very simple principles of 5 elements, 3 doshas, and application of opposites for balance.
I love that. And I love that you say it's just looking at the body, mind, and soul of the individual, and helping them remember and reconnect that what you shared was at first. And obviously we all have a dosha, but then we all have all of them within us. And there is that yin and yang, as you say. And I know for me, I'm definitely pitta. I mean, I feel for a couple of years, when I was pregnant, the kids were really young. I was definitely had a lot of kapha energy, and now, I can feel, the pitta's back, And so it's always just like, I always remember you sharing this, so pitta, which would be me. I would love highly energizing classes, if I was going to work out, kickboxing or something like that. But really, most days what's amazing for me is some gentle yoga versus that kapha person who's really earthy and it's harder to move, and they feel like doing the gentle yoga, but they're actually better off with that more intense vinyasa class or that run or whatever it may be. So, and how does one know what dosha they are? I know that's kind of a big question, but kind of
yeah, right. Well, I love what you're saying, and I first, let me just start it please by saying I see a lot of young women, and by young I mean women in their 30s, because that's still young for me. I think there comes a time in a woman's life where there's, maybe one's busy with children or busy with a certain specific thing that is taking up all of their time, and they are very nurturing. You are very nurturing. You've got your beautiful children, and you've got to be attentive to that. And I see a lot of women maybe getting to a place where they feel like maybe they're missing out, or they're not running their career the way they might have in their 20s, or they don't have a social life like they did in their 20s. And I feel like I want to make sure that we don't use Ayurveda to further beat up on ourselves. And, so I think I see a lot of people do that too. Like, oh, I'm so vata. And what they mean by that is I'm so spacey, or I'm so scattered, or I'm so dopey, or I'm so kapha. People will think of kapha as being lazy. And it's not that kapha is lazy and they just want to go to those, lying on their back yoga classes. Excuse me. But the thing about a kapha person, for example, is it is harder for them to get moving. They are legitimately like a log in the morning when they're trying to get out of bed. And a fire person, a pitta person doesn't get that, and a vata person just bounces right out of bed. So we all have our own doshas, and I think the most important thing about it is to say, you are the power of life, light, and love, which is really what those doshas come from. The power of life projects as the biological life force, which is the vata, and the power of light, which is the pitta, and the power of love, which is the kapha dosha. And given that you are life, light, and love, how can there be anything wrong with you? You're actually perfect, you're whole, you're complete, you're amazing, you're a miracle. Your everything is great and good, beautiful and bountiful and majestic as anything in nature, right? And so Ayurveda is just really an invitation to remember that. And then with that to say, and I need to tweak this right now, because right now I'm feeling stagnant, or I'm feeling too intense, or I'm feeling too light, and I can't kind of quiet down. So what are the things I can do? And a simple thing you can do if you're feeling you can't quiet down is, I always like to say, throw a sweet potato in the oven, roast it up. When it's roasted, open it up and add some coconut oil and some cinnamon. That is really excellent for vata because it's a root, right? It's going to ground. It's got the oil that helps with hydration, and it's got the cinnamon or the spice that's going to help warm up the cold running vata, excuse me. So if it's, another thing that is really easy for a vata person, I think a lot of us have a lot of vata because our world is very vata vitiating, is a term we use, vata promoting. This time of year, winter, if most people are listening in the Northern Hemisphere, it's winter. And this time of year, it is vata season. And so this is a really important time for us to warm, right? Because wind is cold. And so we want to drink ginger tea. We want to make sure we cook our meals. We want to make sure that we put on our socks, maybe put some oil on our feet when we get home at the end of the day, and then cover them with socks. So anything that keeps us warm and hydrated. And hydrated isn't just drinking water, but really it's drinking hot water, warm water, lemon water, and also making sure you're getting the oils that are going to keep the body from drying out. So I'm sorry, your question was, how do you know what your dosha is?
Well, but that was amazing too. I loved hearing all of that. So
sorry.
It was beautiful.
There's a lot of online quizzes, at lauraplumb.com, at my website, I do have a quiz that people can take. But I think it's simple. I think you just know, do you tend to run light, mobile, dry? Or do you tend to run hot and intense and focused? Or do you tend to be the one who's really clear or really efficient? Or really, likes to be in charge? Or do you tend to be more the one who's always reaching out to friends, the one who's kind of keeping the family together, the one who's really nurturing, loving, patient, kind? And sometimes, I don't want to say left behind, but the kapha person's the one who, they're school teachers, they're nurses, they're social workers. They're not often appreciated as much as we probably should appreciate them, because school teachers, at least in the US, should get paid a lot more than they do.
Mm-hmm. And the nurses,
right? And the nurses. I mean, all of that. It's just because what you get paid is in a certain way, it's a sign of appreciation. So,
I know. I bow to our teachers and our nurses, and I absolutely agree.
Right.
Well, I have to say, I feel really grateful because I've had a sneak preview of your book, and I would love to ask, first of all, I know this is one thing that's really important. Why do you suggest seasonal eating? Can you tell us more about that?
Right. That's a great question. So not only do we each have doshas, the Vata, Pitta, Kapha dosha, air, fire, water. I mean, when I say air, fire, and water, the air Vata dosha includes the space, and the Kapha dosha includes the earth, right? So all 5 elements are there. But they're primarily air, fire, and water because those are the most dynamic of the 5 elements. And because of their dynamism, they have a tendency to go in and out of balance. And not only do humans have doshas, but your pets, your animals have doshas, and your home might have a dosha. And it's just really fun to play the dosha game and figure out what all these doshas are and how those doshas in other people and things around you are supportive to you and your dosha, right? So for a pitta person, they might have a really cuddly golden retriever dog pet.
That's what I have.
Because that's very calming. Pitta people, we always say the best medicine for pitta is to laugh and to play, and to be free. So puppy dogs and golden retriever kind of dogs are good for that. So as an example, it's just fun to see what's around you. And the reason I'm saying that is because even time has doshas. So for instance, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. is Vata dosha. 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. is Kapha dosha. That's why it's easier to wake yourself up before 6 and harder after 6. And then 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. is Pitta dosha. With the fire element, that's when our digestive system is strongest, and that's why we say lunch should be the biggest meal. And then it circles around again. So 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. is Vata. 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. is Kapha. That's why we like people to go to bed by 10 p.m. Use the Kapha energy to go to sleep. And then if you don't go to sleep by 10 p.m., you're now in a Pitta dosha time, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., when you might end up with the midnight munchies because you've got that fire again. Or you might, if you get on the computer or you try to finish a project, that Pitta energy is going to want to make you finish. So we always say get to bed before 10, before Pitta kicks in and tries to
before
make
Pitta
you
wakes up.
Right? Gets you on to the next thing. So the same is true for seasons. So summer season, of course, is Pitta dosha. It's hot and it's, a little bit moist. And then autumn season is Vata dosha. Winter is said to be Vata Kapha, and then spring is Kapha. So why is spring Kapha dosha? Because if you live in a place that has snow, the snow is melting, so everything's really wet, kind of muddy. So it's literally water and earth. Or if you live somewhere like Southern California where I am, you might remember this, you get the spring fog, right? So we get May gray, June gloom, we call it. But that usually starts in April. In London, I remember it was very rainy and gray in the spring. So just about anywhere you live, somewhere like Colorado, the snows melt in the mountains and then the rivers swell. Springtime is Kapha season. It is heavy, wet, cold. And what's beautiful about nature is that she gives us in the foods exactly that which will balance the weather. So if spring is heavy, wet, and cold, the foods that come up in spring tend to be balancing to that. So they're light, drying, and heating. An example of that is we get the garlics, we get the onions, we get a lot of leafy greens that are light, and those leafy greens are often astringent, which is drying, and pungent, which is heating. A great example is mustard greens come up in the springtime. Mustard greens are very, very pungent. We get a lot of pungent. Watercress is pungent. We get a lot of those greens. In the summer, when you look at leafy greens that also come up in the summer, they're not as astringent and they're not as pungent. An example of summer greens would be spinach or butter lettuce, right? So we say those greens are a little bit sweet and very hydrating. There's a lot of water content to them. Looking at summer, as just to compare, looking at summer, you also get lots of melons, you get lots of cucumbers. The herbs that come in summer are mint, cilantro. These are very cooling herbs and cooling foods. So each season delivers the food that balances the weather with the opposite qualities, right? So summer is hot. The foods that come up in summer are cooling. Autumn is Vata time, and Vata again is light, mobile, and dry. And so the foods that we want in autumn are going to be grounding and warming. And of course, in autumn, we have our harvest, and we start to can foods, we start to ferment foods. and we start to dry food. So we have the dried grains that need to be cooked. We have the root vegetables that need to be cooked. We have, our fermented cabbage and krauts and those sort of things. And so those are the foods that are really excellent for vata dosha, right? Foods that have to be cooked. We're going to lightly spice them for flavor. Or they've been slightly cooked. We say that fermenting is a kind of pre-cooking. It's also kind of a way of starting to cook the food. And then wintertime, we're eating a lot of soups, a lot of stews. Again, it's cooked, but we may be upping the spice level, making things a little bit more spicy, and lots of hydration, because that tends to be a really dry time. The main thing about winter is that we want to be sure that we keep the immune system strong. So foods that are hydrating and very deeply nourishing. A lot of people in the new year, they want to go on a diet. And in the new year, again, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere and it's wintertime, the new year is not a great time to go on a diet. The body really wants that extra insulation to keep you warm and to keep your immune system strong. It's a great time to reset your diet. It's a great time to nourish really deeply and to get into good rhythms of eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner 3 meals a day. Try to cut down on snacking, and then try not to eat after the sun goes down.
I love everything that you describe is really about, not about sacrifice. It's all about nourishment and nurturing and listening to your body and the wholeness of it all. And which is so beautiful, because here we are in the new year, and probably many people are feeling like, I've got to get on that diet and everything. So, like, does Ayurvedic cooking speak to, like, you've mentioned that lunch should be the main meal, but like how much, when, like, and in these winter months, like, what are some of those immune boosting, I like, maybe some of your favorite recipes to share with us that you might suggest at this time of year?
Okay. So 2 parts to the question, when we eat and how much do we eat, and then some recipes which I'd happily share. The question that one of my teachers loves to ask his students and his clients and his patients, he'll always ask this question: between what to eat, how much to eat, and when to eat, what do you think is the most important? And it's a great question, because people will often say the answer must be when to eat, because it seems like, why else would you be asking the question? But of course, we typically think we're thinking a lot about what to eat, right? And we think that how much we eat matters too. And while those things do really matter, when to eat matters most. And this is what I love so much about Ayurveda, is Ayurveda restores our balance through right alignment. And this whole idea of ritual, the word ritual comes from the Sanskrit word ritu, and ritu means a rhythm. And ritu is the word for seasons. And it's basically that we are moving, everything in nature moves. I mean, everything in the cosmos moves, right? Our earth is spinning on its axis. It's actually circling around the sun. All of our neighbors in the cosmos, the planets, are circling around the sun. And the sun itself is circling around its own sun. And all of that circling, all of that movement is what creates our seasons, right? Our circling around our axis is night and day, and going around the sun is our seasons. And so it's that movement that is constant, that is creating the changes in our life. And in order to stay present to the change, in order to stay aligned or balanced, we can never press the pause button. We can't say to the earth, stop moving, right? We can't say to the solar system, stop, I need a break. It's not going to happen. The thing that gives us a break, the thing that gives us ease, is to move in right alignment. So to live seasonally, to live in rhythm with the day, and to really honor it as well, is such a beautiful thing. And it makes you feel so good. It makes you feel good emotionally, but it also really is nourishing to the body. What that means in terms of eating your meals is the sun is said to be the strongest. We know the sun is strongest actually in the middle of the day. And so we believe that the digestive fire is like the fire in the sky, this great sun that we're circling around. And so your digestive fire is also said to be strongest in the middle of the day. So lunch should be the biggest meal. And lunch is also the meal where you will eat the things that are hardest to digest, because you've got that strong fire to do that digestive work for you. But the sun is light in the morning and it's light in the evening, right? So when you wake up and when at the end of the day, when you have your dinner, those meals should be lighter meals, and they should also be cooked, because you don't have as much digestive fire, so you want to bring external fire to your meals. They're cooked, they're lightly spiced, and they're lighter. That doesn't mean that your morning breakfast could be a big bowl of oatmeal, right? That feels very filling, but oats are actually easy to digest. And so it's got that lightness, and they're slightly drying. So it's got that internal lightness, even though you will feel full. And of course, the nice thing about something like oatmeal or any kind of a cooked grain is that it's cooked, right? So you've brought that fire, and it's better when it's spiced. And it's nice when you cook in some fruit to give that sweetness. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of that's what we look at in terms of daily rhythms. And there's a lot of studies now that show that when people eat their last meal of the day before sundown, which is what Ayurveda says, and then you fast for at least 12 hours, people are losing weight just because of that, because they are giving themselves that 12 to 14-hour fast. Nothing else has to change. But what that does is that gives your body a chance to rest. It's not having to digest food at night. It can actually do the clean and repair and reset overnight. And, the other thing is that when you eat at regular times, so every morning you eat breakfast at the same time, lunch is always at the same time, dinner's at the same time, ideally 7 a.m., noon, and 5 p.m., what you're doing is you're teaching the body, this is when I'm going to eat. And so the body at 6:45 a.m. or 6:55 a.m. starts producing the enzymes that are going to help digestion. If you skip breakfast or you eat at different times, the body says, well, I don't know what's going to come, so I'm not going to produce those enzymes, because enzymes are like a fire that's going to burn internal tissue. And so to protect your body, your digestive system stops producing the enzymes. Now you're then eating at any time, willy-nilly, and now the digestive system isn't preset. And so it doesn't have the digestive power to properly digest your food. And what we say in Ayurveda is ama is one of the main causes of disease. Ama is said to be toxins or poisons, but really the definition is ama is undigested food particles. And they could be undigested simply because you're eating at random times of day. Mm. So it could be the perfect food. It could be the perfect quantity. But if you don't get that right rhythm, then your body's really not knowing what to do with it. And it just stores it. And it stores it as fat until one day, you give it the time, which means you give it a fast, a day or two fasting, so it can go and catch up with itself. I think of the digestive fire as being a lot like our soul, and it has its own timing. And we need to slow down and let our digestive fire, just like we sometimes need to slow down and let our souls catch up to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So in Ayurvedic medicine, do they recommend a couple of days of fasting like how often?
Well, they don't recommend a lot of fasting. Again, Ayurveda is a very loving, very nurturing science.
Yeah.
But Monday evenings are a good time to fast. Monday is moon day, and moon is kapha, right? So we say that moon days, Monday evening, just to skip the meal, or maybe just to have some light broth in the evening. And that's all. Just doing that will give your system, from lunchtime until breakfast the next day, that's a good chunk of time to let your digestive system rest so it can go and pick up the things it didn't get to digest last week.
Yeah.
Cleaning up. Yeah.
And there's a feeling of lightness from that. And so what about, because a lot of the foods that you're mentioning, of course, I think most foods have some kind of protein, but when it comes to protein, because, there's a lot of, diets or nutrition instructions now saying, let's have protein every couple of hours and everything. Does Ayurveda look at it the same way?
Oh gosh, we're getting into something really big here. Oh. Yeah, great question. And I guess again, what I love about Ayurveda is that there's this beautiful poem that, says that, once we come to really truly know ourselves, it's the end of all love longing. And I think Ayurveda is like that search for ourselves in the world outside of us, which can be such a desperate and hungry search. I think that this, at least for me and some of my clients, I've seen people just seem to be kind of, scratching their head, like, what should I eat? And am I getting enough protein? And Ayurveda is just this invitation back to nature, back to a beautiful, holy, sacred, sumptuous relationship with nature. So rather than trying to figure out something with our minds by looking it up online, asking doctors, asking scientists, we're actually able to go straight to the food and ask the food, hey, food, are you going to be the one who loves me today? You know, with our food in Ayurveda, we're looking at something that's whole and something that has evolved over thousands of years, millions of years. You think about how nature has evolved, right? You know, first this planet Earth was just rock and ocean. And, you know, obviously I'm not going to go into the whole of the evolution, but if you think about it, it was nothing. We didn't even have an atmosphere that we could breathe. Slowly, 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 up comes green grasses and prairies and eventually trees and bushes and eventually food, and all that comes before we come. So this world is perfectly designed for us to arrive in so that we can be fed and nourished and strengthened by food. I call that a love story because food loves you so much. It's constantly available to delight you and to delight you enough that you will be drawn to it, and that relationship then can really strengthen and help you come more and more alive. So we feel that food has not, we don't break it down into isolates, right? Those are separate pieces, proteins, carbs, etc. We actually talk about the tastes of food. So there's sweet, salty, sour, pungent, astringent, bitter. And the tastes feed the elements within you. Sweet feeds the water and the earth element, and then all the way on the other side, bitter feeds the space and air element. So if you're a Vata dosha, you're already a very air space person. You don't need as much of the bitter. You don't need as much of the space air element foods, right? And so really, but even, you know, all of that's in my book, obviously, but at the same time, I really hope that people can just like go put your hand on the food in the field or at the farmer's market and say, literally, close your eyes and say, is this the food that my body most needs right now? It's about cultivating a relationship with food rather than having scientists tell us what we're supposed to eat, because they don't know you. And right, they don't really know exactly what you need. The only person who knows you and who really knows what you need is you. And I find that for me, Ayurveda is really about cultivating the awareness, the intuition, the relationship with ourselves that is most nourishing and strengthening, right? It's really about believing in ourselves and having that confidence.
And I love that. You know, the whole way along, it just is about connection with ourselves, with the earth, with Mother Earth. And it's like with love within ourselves of food, of the earth, and just consciousness and mindfulness. Like I love, you're like, I wonder what dosha my dog is. You have me thinking, you know, obviously, you know, and it's amazing. Like there's five of us in the house, so there's 5 doshas. And I love it. Of course, you know, our home is a dosha, and then every single food has that, and every season and every part of the day. And it really is, it's really not about just being in your head. It's just like coming down to your heart, feeling it. And it's like, just like, you know, I even tell people, if you're picking a crystal, you know, for your home, or it will speak to you. So it's the same thing, whether you're in your own vegetable garden or at the farmer's market or at the grocery store. It's like, you're going to be drawn to, oh my goodness, this purple is so beautiful, this eggplant or whatever it may be. And it's like, oh, you know, and like, that's what I need right now. Like you start smelling it or touching it, and it's like your body speaking to you, the vegetables speaking to you. So it's amazing. It's beautiful.
And it is exactly like you say, it is like a crystal, only it's even, you know, crystals have so much energy in them, but your food has so much energy in it. It's so much intelligence in it. It is speaking to you, and it's going to merge with you. It's going to become you. That beautiful purple is going to become a tissue or an organ in your body. So right? It's genuine that you can have that relationship. And I really feel that Ayurvedic cooking is all about cultivating a loving relationship with yourself and nourishing yourself through food, because food wants to nourish you.
So beautiful. Oh my goodness. Like your book is so incredible. And I'm going to have in the show notes, like where we can get the book. And and you have this amazing blog, Food and Love Story, where, oh my goodness, recipes that you share are so incredible as well. So,
did you want me to share a quick recipe?
Oh yes, I would love that. Yes, please.
Just very quickly for winter, I know you were talking about, especially for people who have children, but anybody, the winter, this winter particularly, there's been a lot of colds and a lot of flu. And one of the things that I found find so helpful is just to chop a piece of ginger about the size of your thumb from the knuckle to the tip. So just that much. Peel the ginger, chop it. You can put it in the blender. I put in the blender half a lemon, wash the lemon first, and then put half a lemon, the whole thing. You're not just the juice, but the whole half lemon. With that piece of ginger, 1 cup of water, a tablespoon of honey, and a sprinkle of cinnamon. Put it on the blender, put it on high, blend it up for about a whole minute, and then strain that. And then you're going to have a cup of this lemon ginger honey. Mm. Then boil some water. Mix the boiled water. So you're going to take basically the 1 cup of the lemon ginger honey with another 1 cup of hot water. Mix it all together, pour it in the thermos, and sip it all day long.
Sounds amazing.
It's and really good medicine, and it's delicious.
Yeah. Well, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. Thank you. And I'm living on, the raw local honey and ginger, and that sounds incredible. Thank you. And so helpful in the season where flus and colds are around. And Laura, I feel like you, with every breath that you take, every word that you utter is sacred. But I would love to ask you, what are 3, it's almost like non-negotiables, like 3 sacred things that you do every single day that keep you present and balanced in a sacred way of living?
That's a great question. The only reason I'm pausing is because it's hard to just pick 3.
Top 3 that come to mind today, like in this moment.
So listening is a big thing for me. I use my ears to be present, and by that I mean I wake up, first thing I do is I listen. What do I hear? I might hear a car in the distance, but I usually hear birds singing, or a bit of silence or wind. I love to just wake up and first thing listen. So that's kind of like a morning meditation. I do have a morning meditation, but that's what I do first. Always checking in with my breath, noticing how my breath is, how I'm feeling, taking deeper breaths. And then a third thing is, in one way or another, I'm really paying attention to nature. So I might go into the garden and it might just be watering the plants. It might be going and picking some basil for my lunch. But in one way or another, it's getting my hands into the dirt or onto the plants, or touching in some way nature, because that really feeds me. So listen, beautiful. Breath, nature.
Beautiful. And one last question. Because, oh my goodness, you do so much incredible work in the world. And I am so grateful to be touched by your work every single day. How may we serve you?
I am so delighted every time I see what you're up to, and I'm so impressed and so inspired. I just love how available you are in the world, how big you are serving, how bigly you are serving, how immensely you are really available, and your beautiful big heart. And I feel like the best way we can all serve each other is to really show up. I'm so excited to be alive right now. I think that while it's been devastating over the past year or two to hear how many women have been hurt, as we've been hearing in the Me Too movement, I think it's also extremely beautiful to see how much women are showing up for each other, and how we're really holding hands across the world and listening and being present and standing for each other. And it's so, so beautiful. And I just really see women and I feel women rising. And so to me, that's the service. That's the service that feeds and nourishes and grows, because women, when we are truly women, the power of life, the power of light, the power of love that runs through women, when we connect and when we stand in solidarity, there's no stopping women, and there's no stopping what's going to come and what's going to be created. And it's just very, very exciting. So thanks for being a huge part of that. I know you're a big part of that, and I truly honor it. That feeds my soul.
Oh my goodness. Well, I love you so much, and I'm so grateful. And I just highly, highly recommend everybody that's listening here with us, Ayurvedic Cooking for Beginners by Laura Plumb, just to have for daily meals. I like it. I'm the book is like a prayer, just reading a prayer. So
Oh,
yeah, so thank you, Laura. I am so honored and so grateful to have you here. And all the information is going to be in the show notes. Thank you
mm.
so much. I love you.
I love you. Thank you, Amanda, so much. It's been wonderful being with you.
Thanks, beloveds, for joining us today. Please come over to themandacons.com to continue the conversation and get access to all my podcasts, blogs, and videos. Did you enjoy this podcast? If so, please subscribe to the Amanda Cons podcast on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. Feel free to pass this podcast on to your friends. That helps us get incredible guests to share their secrets for an inspired and joyful life. If you want more great resources, come over to amandacons.com and join my mailing list for all my latest content. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time,